How you guys doing, Kalamazoo? Come on, come on, come on. I've been a college president at 2 institutions. And I'll tell you, there's a question I often get that I want to tell you about because I've been thinking about it. And it comes in this fashion. I'll be somewhere talking to someone about higher education, and if you haven't been living under a rock, you know in higher education we've been in the news a little bit lately. A question will be, hey, does the value of higher education start to decline? Might it actually be erased by AI, artificial intelligence? A mom asked me just a week ago, my kid just got a college degree. Is AI going to take his job? Well, let me tell you, I pulled out my favorite AI app just recently because I wanted to know what time my flight was going to leave. And I put it in the AI app and put in my flight airline and my number. And it said, we can't figure that out, you'll have to go somewhere else. So, but don't get me wrong, I am a fan of AI. I think it's a useful tool. I think it's going to revolutionize the way we think and do things. In fact, I trust AI so much, I plugged in the question. Hey, AI, will AI be able to replicate or eliminate the value of a college degree or human skills? And here's what it said. Not really. In fact, human skills that are probably not replicable by AI are judgment, leadership, purpose, and the ability to have ethics and empathy. So, that could be a mic drop moment on this question. But let's think about this, okay? If AI is going to overcome what we learn in college or what we have as humans, I want to introduce you to some idea that I'm starting to tell people about when I answer that mom's question. I don't think AI can overcome what college or any other lived experience gives you because there's this thing that I'm calling authentic human intelligence. So it's not artificial intelligence, it's AHI, authentic human intelligence. And I have to tell you, even AI tells you this phrase in that question I just told you I asked it. Wisdom is often gained from lived experiences and consequences. And I believe that. And you might not be surprised that I believe the laboratory where that happens the most effectively is this place that we have as college. And that's not to say that it doesn't exist elsewhere, but I'm telling you, I was an airline pilot, I was a federal prosecutor. I am telling you, the way we develop AHI, authentic human intelligence, in college is second to none. I lived and experienced it. You see, I didn't have the traditional path to being a college president. In fact, the truth is, I was about middling student in high school. I only went to college because my parents were first-gen students and they insisted I go. And during my college experience, I started to become a different person. I started to develop these AHI, these authentic human intelligence skills that I believe are even more valuable today, especially with the onset of artificial intelligence. Let me tell you how I learned those. Because my story is interesting, I hope, but it's not unique. I thought about this throughout my time, and I thought, what would be a course that I learned authentic human intelligence, but I really didn't apply with the discrete knowledge? I took an anthropology course. In fact, it was required. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken it. And one of the readings was learning how people deal with poverty and the choices they have to make, which, by the grace of God, I didn't have to encounter. Another part of the anthropology course was a book that we had to learn about how people were made victims of sex crimes in the country of India. Another thing I was completely clueless about. And what I learned in those two things, I can't say I applied in the flight deck of an airline or in the courtroom or as the boardroom as a college president, but I started to get interested in people who lived and saw things differently than me. I started to see the value of curiosity of other people. I actually started to build what even AI tells you is an authentic human skill of empathy and curiosity. I also had to deal with ambiguity. There was a policy at my university, which is the same university I'm proud to be at now, and I didn't like the ambiguity of the policy. It said which course I had to take and couldn't take. And I asked the authority figures to change it, and I didn't do a very good job because the answer was no. But I kept working on it, and I learned, and I asked someone for help, and I started to understand relationships and how to communicate in an effective way. I don't believe AI could have done that for me if it had existed. I happened to have a roommate that I had a pretty bad falling out with. And I regret some of the things I did in that relationship. And I hope that he did too. And I learned how to interact with people in conflict. I learned a little bit about who I wanted to be and who I kind of didn't want to be. At the end of my college career, I was in flight training, and I was so excited I got to be a flight instructor. I was an employee of what was, in my opinion, and still in my opinion, the best flight school in the country. And I learned how to show up as a professional. I learned the consequences of representing my own institution well or not well. Again, these are not unique to me. These are not unique to you all. They're unique. They are part of any one of us who build authentic human intelligence skills. And I don't need you to trust me for it because I know you remember what it felt like to have someone show you empathy. I know you remember what it felt like to learn how to care about someone more than yourself. I know you remember what it felt like to want to follow a leader because they told you they knew things that you could believe in. These are the authentic human intelligence skills that we in higher education need to robustly build and show our communities that we are the ones that can deliver it. And here's how we do it. We continually put these students from the classroom into the real world experiences that even AI say wisdom is generated from lived experiences. Now, I got to tell you, my story is interesting, but the stories I see all throughout the campuses that I've served are just more examples of why AI will never touch what we have as our own humanity in authentic human intelligence. This is a picture of one of our students named Martin. Now, Martin was a student at one of my colleges, and he was learning how to use the power of data to make financial decisions. His dad and he were really close, and they had a dream that they were going to buy a house as an investment property. And they started working together, and Martin's job was to gain the understanding, the expertise, to figure out which house to buy, how to build the capital to do it, purchase it, renovate it, and make it into an investment property. And they were on their way, but unfortunately, unbeknownst to both of these partners, Martin's dad passed away. And Martin is in the middle of undergraduate. And he says today that if he had AI, it probably would have told him not to make the bet on himself. Not to exercise the judgment that he and the legacy play that his dad and he built should go forward. And it shouldn't surprise you that that education that he gained in the classroom was developed and applied in his own authentic human intelligence to purchase the house. And of course, now Martin has worked at an international bank, at a wealth management company, still owns that house as an investment property, and he is a living, breathing example of how judgment is something that he learned in college that AI will never be able to teach. This is a student that I had the privilege of supervising. His name's Adam. Really smart kid, good pilot, and learning to fly some 25 years after I did. And the reason I know that is because when I was learning to fly, we didn't have cell phones. But Adam did. And Adam does what we all do. When they're doing something fun and exciting, they hold the cell phone up and they take a picture of themselves. Well, Adam did that in the cockpit, and we had a rule that was a little bit against that. Now, Adam was a smart kid, and so he said to me, look, Russ, the rule you're applying against me, and by the way, this was not just some laughing matter, it was discipline. I think it's ambiguous, Russ. It's not really clear whether I can or can't use it, and in what phases of flight I should or should not use it. And by the way, Russ, there might be an educational benefit here if we could actually use this to show what happens in the cockpit. Now, in aviation, we're pretty militaristic. So it was a little bit of an eyebrow raiser when I asked Adam, instead of, hey, go do your lashes, it was, why don't you contemplate how we would change our manual and find out a best way to counter this problem as we go forward, because the problem's not going away. And Adam will tell you today, it was a little bit unclear whether he wanted to take on that risk. It wasn't part of his school, and it wasn't part of his curriculum. And he actually wondered if I would bait and switch him and actually use it to hurt him. But he took on that risk, and he took on that ambiguity, and he had to go ask other institutions what they did in these situations, many of which they didn't have. He had to teach himself the skills to write a policy. Then he had to bring it to me, and by the way, others in the institution didn't like the idea that I was tasking him with this. But it wouldn't surprise you that Adam actually did develop the policy that applied and helped not just himself, but future pilots at our institution. Also, if you get on a major airline today, you're probably got a decent chance he's sitting in the front seat, because that's what the major airline hired in him, was the authentic human skill to take an ambiguity and a problem and problem solve it with other people and convince people in authority that he should have the judgment call. This is Casey. Casey took part in a program at my college that I'm so proud of, because the Michigan State Police allow us to investigate cold cases. Now, these are cases that have been closed because we couldn't figure out who did it or why they did it or what happened. And so the Michigan State Police allows undergraduate students to start investigating the case file and interviewing witnesses and potential suspects. And Casey started doing that really well. And what she started to learn was there's a really valuable skill, an authentic human skill, to talk to people and gain their trust in an authentic human connection. Show them empathy and willingness to listen. And it works. She worked on cases where we solved cold cases, and then she got hired by the Michigan State Police themselves and had to apply this, and wonderfully did, right away when she was called to a scene of a crime where someone took a valuable piece of property and sold it to a third person who gave them what looked like real money, but it was counterfeit. The Michigan State Police quickly responded and followed the suspect to a house where there was a standoff. And it was Casey who, over hours and over empathetic communication, talked the suspect away from a violent interaction, coming out with over $36,000 in counterfeit bills and recovery of the stolen property. Justice was done and safety was established because of the authentic human skill built in college of empathy and communication. This is my friend Jerome. The deck was clearly stacked against Jerome. You wouldn't know it from this picture because he is happy now. But from age 10 to 18, he moved throughout the foster care system 13 times. Never had anywhere to place his feet. And never had a chance to understand what his passions were, what his purpose was. Never had a chance to gain that wisdom that is gained through lived experiences. But when he got to our college, he finally found a place he belonged. And if you talk to him, he'd smile like this, because this is what he does when I see him on our campus, almost all the time. He'll tell you that he was able to root himself in a place where his own growth was matched with the community's growth. And that is a specific human skill. It's a thing that you all know. It's a thing that now Jerome has, and he's on his way to graduate this year. Found his passion, his purpose. Those stories are also not special. The truth is, everyone in this room, and anyone who's been successful, and frankly, some of us who've struggled with lack of success, know the truth. That when we learn through human experiences, we become better. We're better teammates. We're better friends. We're better employees. We're better people. That is essentially our humanity, which is why AI itself even admits it can't replace that. And it's why in higher education, we will go forward today and start to build these discrete times and places that prove our authentic human intelligence and give value to communities and students and answer that question of that mother. And so I'll ask you, when you get that question, send them my way and tell them, well, AI cannot replace authentic human intelligence. Thank you.